discretion is advised. This is 10-Minute Murder.
Zachary Davis was a quiet kid with a history of mental illness. When he was 9 years old in 2007, he fell into a deep depression. His father died from ALS, aka Lou Gehrig's disease. By the way, do people still call it Lou Gehrig's disease? Surely not. That guy died in the 40s, and I bet he doesn't appreciate his memory being associated with the disease that killed him. Anyway, Zach's paternal grandmother, Gail, claims that soon after his father passed away, he was brought to see Dr. Bradley Freeman at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Zach did, in fact, have a mental disorder, the doctor claimed. Zach was given a schizophrenia and depression disorder diagnosis. And it's also worth noting that Zach claimed that he heard voices. He was generally quiet, as I mentioned, but he was starting to shut down even more. Zachary claimed during one of his 4 meetings with Dr. Freeman to have heard his dead father's voice. Now, it's common for anyone, especially those who are young, to experience a severe depression after the loss of a loved one, as Zachary had done. He experienced the first 2 stages of the grieving process, but he didn't quite seem to make it to the recovery stage. And this may be partly due to the fact that his mother abruptly ended his counseling sessions. At his trial, even his grandmother said that if Zachary had received the necessary medical care, quote, this would not have happened. Going on with their lives, the family relocated to Sumner County, Tennessee. Melanie Davis, Zach's mom, put a lot of effort into her paralegal profession and triathlon training. She made every effort to move on from her husband's passing and maintain her boy's happiness. She didn't realize or grasp how far down Zachary had gotten. Among his peers, the 15-year-old Zach was an outcast. He frequently whispered this strange monotone whisper, and he wore the same hoodie every day. On his phone, he had both a catalog of torture devices and an app about serial killers. One of the terrifying and disturbing anecdotes in his journals include, quote, you can't spell slaughter without laughter. He read Misery by Stephen King and engaged in violent video game play. Which, BT dubs, I've mentioned on this podcast before how the false claims of the effect of violent video games, they're too often used as an excuse for violent behavior, when we can clearly see, as in the story we're talking about today, Zach was mentally unwell. Playing Call of Duty did not push him over the edge. And for the record, when I was about the same age as Zachary, I read Stephen King's Misery, thought it was disturbing and fantastic, and I also played violent video games. The big difference here is Zachary's mental illness. It wasn't until the evening on August 10th, 2012, that it became clear that he was outwardly violent. Josh, Zach's older brother, who was 16, and his mother went to see a movie together. When they got back, Zach packed his clothes, notebooks, a toothbrush, gloves, a ski mask, and a claw hammer into a bag and a satchel. Zachary might have appeared, on the surface, to be planning to run away from home, but on the inside, something more sinister was at work.
Did you kill your mother?
Yeah.
And why did you kill her?
She wasn't taking care of my family.
Did you think about discussing it with her instead of killing her?
I didn't think it wouldn't do anything.
When did you decide to kill your mother?
I decided the day I did it.
And the method you chose was what?
Beating her to death.
You beat her to death with what?
Sledgehammer.
And how many times did you hit her with the sledgehammer?
I'd say about 20 times.
Was this a 3-pound sledgehammer, 5-pound sledgehammer?
I don't know.
Heavy?
Yeah.
Way bigger than a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
In case you thought you misheard in that little clip there from Zach on the Dr. Phil show, he did chuckle when describing his murder weapon. At 9 o'clock, Melanie went to sleep. Zachary got a sledgehammer from the garage and went to his mother's room. He struck her about 20 times as he bludgeoned her to death. Covered in her blood, Zachary locked her door before heading to the family gaming room and doused that space in alcohol and gasoline. He lit it on fire, locked the door, and left. His plan was to burn his older brother Josh to death, but because he shut the door to the game room, the fire didn't spread quickly and the alarm woke him up. His mother was a bloody mess when he went to check on her. Josh went to someone else's house to escape the fire and what he had done. Authorities located Josh a distance of over 10 miles away from his house. In his statement to the police, he claimed, quote, "I didn't feel anything when I killed her."
You remember opening the door, right? It wasn't locked?
It wasn't.
Did you stand there and look at her for a minute before you did it?
Yeah.
Did she make a noise?
I could just hear the hammer hitting her head.
And what did it sound like?
There was this wet thumping sound.
Yeah. How long before you hit her the second time?
Just a few seconds.
Did you think she was already dead?
She woke up and she started seizing up.
Did she look at you?
I looked into her eyes, but she didn't look at me.
And again, he's laughing as he details how he murdered his own sleeping mother. A reminder of what he put in his journal. You can't spell slaughter without laughter. Zachary Davis told the police how his father's voice instructed him to kill his mother in a disturbing confession that was presented in the court as evidence. When the detective questioned Zach in this confession about whether he would still carry out the attack if he could go back in time, Zach replied, quote, "I would probably kill Josh with a sledgehammer too." In the course of the trial, defense lawyer Randy Lucas questioned Zach, quote, "Did he tell you to do anything specific to your mother?" Zach said no, and displayed no remorse. Investigators showed him bloody photos of the work he had done on his mother. No reaction. He actually never expressed any regret at all. He claimed that he chose a sledgehammer as his tool because it provided him, quote, "the highest chance of killing her," and because, quote, "I was worried that I'd miss." Zachary's interview with Dr. Phil was also shown to the jury at the trial, part of which you just heard. Zachary made an attempt to pin the murder on his brother at one point during the trial. Even his defense lawyer, who publicly stated in court that Zachary Davis killed his mother, was shocked by the claim. His defense team was only trying to have his sentence reduced, and trying to blame his brother for the crime did not help that cause. "You turned bad, Mr. Davis. You crossed over to the dark side," Judge D. David Gay told him in court. And that much is clear and easy. The legal system and the 12-person jury struggled with the idea that while Zachary had obviously planned to kill his mother, it was equally plain that he was seriously mentally ill. Zach's paternal grandmother argued that he had a severe mental disorder and had not been given any assistance. Quote, "Every guidance counselor and teacher ought to go on trial alongside Zach," according to her. "Zach is not an evil person. He made a terrible error as a child." She thinks Melanie died as a result of her failure to provide Zach the assistance he required. Zach's original doctor, Dr. Freeman, further testified in court that his judgment was driven by his psychosis, and that as a result of his mental illness, he was unable to have planned the killings. However, the judge and jury had a different opinion, and Zach was given a life sentence after the jury deliberated for 3 hours. In Tennessee, a life sentence carries a minimum of 60 years with a 51-year parole window. By the time Zachary Davis gets released from prison, he'll be in his mid-60s. Whether the murder was committed in cold blood or as a result of psychosis, we won't ever really know, even though we can lean towards the latter, probably. It's still a heartbreaking story of a family forever changed. That is 10-Minute Murder for today. Brief and bingeable true crime. I'm Joe, I'm the host, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to this podcast. And I'll be honest with you, I considered not putting those clips in there, those audio clips from the Dr. Phil show, for no other reason than I don't really like Dr. Phil. And I can't put my finger on exactly why. It just feels like the vibes are off. The Dr. Phil vibes overall are off for me. And I also low-key blame him for that Catch Me Outside girl becoming a thing. By the way, she is rich now. She turned that Catch Me Outside thing into like some big empire. And she's super rich. She could be a terrible person, I don't know, but good for her. Gotta strike while the iron's hot, I guess. Hey, if this is your first time listening to 10 Minute Murder, please subscribe now so that you can catch up on all the back episodes and never miss any of the new ones. Connect with 10 Minute Murder on social media. See the visuals that we're talking about here on the podcast. It's nothing gross, it's nothing graphic. It's just places and faces of what we're talking about here on the podcast. And if you like this episode, please leave a rating and review on Apple or any place that's possible. Your positive feedback is very much appreciated. Go to 10minutemurder.com for all things 10 Minute Murder.
Did you say the hoes are laughing?
Yep. Catch me outside. How about that?